they saved the best for last. I'm going to do a quick slide with some presentation here, introductions of the panel, and then we'll be working through some slides, and then we'll get to a question and answer session. And then after that, we have a film we'd like to show you. It's called A Letter to Kelly. Okay, you can read the slide just as good as I can. You know, operational, sustained Mach 3 aircraft. Okay, here's our great panel. We're going to start out with the introductions, a quick little history of how they got to the SR program and what they did. B.C. Thomas will be going first.
Hello. I'm B.C. Thomas. I was an ROTC guy who was commissioned in 1964. Gosh, it was a long time ago. And then went to pilot training, and then my first assignment was KC-135 co-pilot, where I probably learned more doing that than I did in pilot training. It was quite a trip. After that, I went to Vietnam and flew combat tours in the C-130, and then after that I went to the short wing B-57 Canberra, the B-57C, and after that I upgraded to the RB-57F, that's the reconnaissance version of the B-57. Then from there I went to the test pilot school, and my primary airplane there was the F-104, which I absolutely loved, and I also flew the U-2 there in the systems test. And then I went to Beagle to be an SR-71 pilot, which was by far the best assignment I've ever had.
Hang on a second. Don Campbell's next, please.
We can't get this straight.
Good afternoon. How's everybody? I hope good. As you said, my name is Don Campbell. I entered the Air Force in March of 1959. My first assignment was B-47 bombers at Bunker Hill Air Base, Indiana. I went and transitioned to B-58s. I stayed on B-58s, and while I was there, General Nelson got hold of the wing commander, and they called me in, asked me if I'd like to go to California. I said, what for? And they said, we can't tell you, but we know you'll like it. So about 2 weeks later, they showed me a picture of a YF-12, which is the closest they could get to an SR-71. But anyway, I ended up at Beale Air Force Base in 1964, and retired from Beale Air Force Base in 1986. So I decided to hang around for a while. But I worked the SRs, T-38s, U-2s, and KC-135s. I had a ball doing it. So they called me the maintenance superintendent. All the mechanics on all those airplanes worked for me, and all I can say about it, there was never a dull day. Thank you.
Jerry Glasser, please.
I grew up in New York City, and all I wanted to do was graduate from high school and avoid the cops. I'm very serious. That was me. If I graduated from high school and avoided the cops, I'd be pretty successful. And 31 years later, I was jumping into the SR-71. So you know, I always pitched myself Frankie's from the Bronx and I'm from Queens, so we really don't like each other. I graduated from Williams Pilot Training F4s, a little C-130 type, mainly F5s. I had a really good experience during the Reagan days. We were putting F5s in a lot of Africa and Mid-Eastern countries. So as a young captain, I basically traveled the world in clandestine stuff to get planes from point A to point B. Was a non-operational test pilot. I was an OT&E, operational test and evaluation editor, which is Palmdale, and I got my chance to fly the SR, and I spent almost 7 years. DC's the high time. I've got about 900 plus hours. Was an instructor, and every time you fly the bird, you learn something new. There's a new color. There's something. You're always mesmerized by the blessing you have to be privileged to fly a bird, and no flight is a boring flight. I mean, every time you see it, you find something new. There's something new with the airplane. There's a new visualization outside. And I'm kind of a Yoda guy. Remember Yoda? Do or do not, there is no try. There's no try.
Frank Stampf, please.
Hi, my name is Frank Stampf. As Jerry said, I came from the Bronx. Whoever heard of the Queens bombers? It's the Bronx bombers. Anyway, I never take applause for that. I grew up in New York City and went to an aviation high school. I got interested in aviation when I was quite young. Older brother went in the service and that gave me the bug. I graduated from New York Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in aerospace technology, but I knew that I wasn't going to be smart enough to do that for a living. So I went to the local Air Force recruiter and signed up, and about 6 months later I was going to OTS. When I graduated from officers training school and finished nav training, I went to my first operational assignment was with the RF-4C, the Donald Douglas RF-4C, reconnaissance version of the F-4. A lot of people have the transition from, I'm sorry, I have to back up a little bit. When I graduated from navigator training, I flew the RF-4, and then I tried to get into the SR-71, and believe it or not, they hired me. And I thought that was pretty cool. When you get selected for the program, they hook you up with a crewmate. Basically, you get married to the crewmate, and you fly together all the time once you're flying operational missions. The crew member, the pilot that I was crewed with, I was lucky enough to be crewed with a guy named Gil Bergelson. He's unfortunately passed away, but great guy, his memory stays. And when he got the question at these things, in fact, it might have been at this site, when somebody asked what do you got to do to get in the SR program, his answer was, you got to be dumb, and really short. And he said, he was 6'4", and he said he was so dumb that they waived the requirement.
Okay, my name is Mike Relja. I was in the Air Force, obviously, from 1966. I got to Beale on 1973, got on the SR program. Between Beale, Kadena, one of our bases overseas, and Mildenhall, England, and flight test. And then when the program was canceled in 1990, I lucked out and got to work with NASA, and I worked with them on their SR program for the last flight in 1999. I used to go to the reunions after the Air Force program was canceled, and the guys would say, what are you doing? I said, I still work on SRs, I don't know about the rest of you. Again, you can look at the slide just as good. The temperatures around 500 degrees at the cockpit, 800 degrees back here, but there's some 1200 degree temperatures back at the tail of the airplane. Different models from the A-12 to the SR. The titanium goose is actually down in LA at the Museum of, I think it's Science and Industry down there. Your airplane out here falls in the category of an SR-71A. NASA had 3 airplanes there for a time being. When the NASA program manager retired, He said, never in the history of NASA has a project gone so little with so much. Losses by model number and tail numbers, or not, excuse me, not tail numbers. Program times, total flight hours, almost 54,000. Mach 3 time, almost 12,000 hours Mach 3 time. The whole program. Now this doesn't count NASA, this is strictly Air Force. Total sorties, total refuelings, 25,000, almost 26,000 refuelings. World records, 1974, New York to London, London to LA. 1976, closed course record. Pat's gone. Okay, the last record set in 1990, coast to coast, Los Angeles to DC, St. Louis to Cincinnati, Kansas City to Washington, DC, flown by Ed Yoga. A-12 agency operations, we had nothing to really do with these people. We used to call them brand X. The different theaters of operation. Beale pretty much took care of the Caribbean, Central America. We had airplanes in England, took care of that areas there. Then we had the airplanes at Kadena. Took care of Korea, Vietnam, things like that. There was no overflights of the Soviet Union. Fly along the periphery, but not overflights. Configuration of the fuel tanks and mission bays. The airplane had 11 different places we could carry stuff, including a nose. We could have a radar nose, or we could have an OBC nose. But then we had other bays on the airplane that we could carry stuff internally. Okay, I want to stop at this slide here and just give you an idea of possible areas that you guys can ask questions about. So, I'd like to start there and see if anybody's got a question they would like.
I got a question. I'm joking. You guys have some questions coming, or we can go get a beer. I mean,
Don, you served many decades on the SR-71 program. What can you compare and contrast what things were like in the early years versus the latter years?
Can I get you to just repeat that again?
Oh, can you, you served so long in the SR-71 program, can you compare and contrast what it was like from the early years to the latter years? You know, all of the lessons learned, there must have been tremendous change.
One of the first things we had to learn, we had to write the tech manuals and things to work on the airplane. But because we had never done it, we didn't know how long it would take to do each one of those jobs. So I had to put together a team of people to go out and actually perform every function we could find on the airplane and do a time and motion study on them so we could develop our tech data and those type of things. It was a long, drawn-out process. I had about 60 people working on it. And it was a lot of writing. But it paid off. It was well worth it. He asked how we compress the time. Basically through a learning curve. You know, when you first start doing a job, regardless of the task level or anything, it takes longer because you've never done it before and you got to learn how to do it. And once we had a couple of people trained how to do it, I used those people to train other people on how to do it and do it the right way and take whatever shortcuts they could.
Could you quickly address man hours in the early days versus man hours towards the end, per flight hour?
Well, when we first started, again, because of the unknowns that we were having, we would do a pre-flight. It would take us probably about 12 hours to pre-flight the aircraft and get it ready to go to flight. 6 guys, 12 hours. It wasn't just a one-man job. Later on, due to experience, learning curve, and those types of things, we reduced that total time frame down to about 3 hours. And got it done with 2 to 3 people rather than 6. So it took less people, less time, and the longer it progressed, the better it got.
Do you still have the numbers for per man hours per flight hour and early versus the end? At one time you told me, and I forgot, I'm sorry.
When we first started out, the man hour per flight hour was in excess of 500 hours for 1 hour flight time. Later on, we got that down to about 200, 210, and made a significant improvement, but it took time and training to do that.
Can you tell us about unstarts? How they felt, what you did to recover, how often they happened?
BC or here?
Yeah, an unstart. First, you have to have the inlet started. What that means is, as you go supersonic, the engine cannot take supersonic air, so it has to have a method designed to change the supersonic air into subsonic. You do that through a convergent divergent nozzle, and it just so happens the physics is such that when you hit the smallest point, it starts to diverge. That's where the normal shock will be. Now, normal shock is perpendicular to the airflow, and every supersonic airflow has to, if it goes from supersonic to subsonic, like in a tube, it has to terminate in a normal shock. Now, the pressure recovery from the speed side, the Mach side, to the subsonic side, the pressure recovery is this function of 1 over the Mach number in the normal shock. So what you want to do is take the Mach 3 air and slow it down in an orderly and predictable way. And you do that with this movable spike. So as the spike moves, it not only opens the capture area, but the angular architecture of both the spike and the nacelle set up a series of oblique shocks. And from one oblique shock to the next, the pressure increases and the speed decreases until you get to the normal shock. So the pressure recovery from that inlet that you see out there on the airplane is about as good as you can get. So that means that you can have a lot of pressure in the inlet. The air pressure where we flew was about 1/2 of 1 pound per square inch, which is virtually a vacuum. And the pressure down here at sea level is about 14.7, or call it 15. And we would have in our inlet sea pressure, or sometimes greater. So the engine, as far as operating as a jet engine, it's like operating at sea level. Now the penalty for that is temperature rise. We also have a temperature rise when this happens. So it's about 800 degrees centigrade at the face of the compressor, and that's our limit is 800. It's kind of funny. When they made the airplane, the inlet temperature gauge was in centigrade. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. And no, it's in Fahrenheit. Help me out, Jerry. It's Fahrenheit.
I bet it was.
No, I think it was centigrade. Anyway, I know what it was. Yeah, when they made the engine, they said it would 800 degrees Fahrenheit is the limit, and the gauge is in centigrade, and that turns out to be 427. So we had to memorize 427.
Good, Mike.
I think it would be better if it was 800, it'd be easier to. Jerry will take it from here.
The engine is just a pump. It doesn't provide much thrust and speed. It's the afterburner and the supersonic ejector. But at upstart, the pressure will go from 17 psi in the engine to about 3 instantaneously. And basically at Mach 3, the air is flowing forwards. It's coming out of the inlet forwards. You lose about 70% of the thrust on one side. And it's kind of exciting. It's not an engine problem, it's an inlet problem of function of doors and scheduling. And it's annoying. It raises your blood pressure. The plane yaws. They're especially exciting at night. You really get a little upset sometimes when one happens at night. But the recovery is not straightforward. The problem is if you don't recover, what's cooling the engine is the air coming into the inlet too. So it becomes an engine problem due to temperature. We've all had unstarts. They're part of the game. Due to turbulence, misscheduled spikes or doors, and they're exciting. The new analog system, the old analog system was more susceptible. The new system didn't cure the problem. I think because there's so much dynamics going on, fluid flow, turbulence, you go through temperature changes, and the computers are trying to react to that, and all of a sudden it just, the normal shock, which correctly stated by BC, is not in the proper place, and that has to be specifically placed within millimeters. And when it's not, from supersonic flow, crap happens, and crap happens really, really fast. And the pressure, BC, goes to about 3 psi, and it drops instantaneously in the first thing. You want to recover as fast as possible. We have methods of recovering, driving the spike forward to capture the shock and recover it, but if we don't do that, we look at the engine because the engine temperatures start going up. And we have to be really careful that it's an inlet problem, that we don't want to have an engine problem. We want to solve the inlet problem. But it's an inlet issue, not an engine issue. Is that going to make sense? Okay.
Somebody else?
So I would just like to thank you for your service, Mike, and all of you for being here. It's truly a privilege and an honor. My question is, if you could tell me your 2 most memorable flights in the SR-71, unless you have like one favorite. Thank you.
Good question.
I mean, to describe the SR-71 flight would take a long time, so I don't know if it's going to take up the rest of the time. My most memorable flight was I flew what we call the trolling mission after the attempted shoot down of Maury Rosenberg and Edie McKinn. It was about a month or 6 weeks after that attempted shoot down when we were visited at Kadena, Taiwan, by Mr. Carlucci, who was the Deputy Secretary of Defense, who later became Secretary of Defense, and also the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Forgot his name, but anyway. They came and briefed us on setting up a special mission for, we drew our sorties down about 30 miles from what we normally did. And he says, we're going to start business as usual, flying the same sorties that we used to. But we're going to do it this way. We're going to fly a mission exactly like the one that Maury and Edie flew, which was a 2-looper that went around China through the Straits of Taiwan, and then they looped twice across the DMZ of Korea, and that was on the second refueling. So he says, and we want you over that particular spot where the missile was launched within a minute, he said. They said, well, really, we want you there within 30 seconds. So it wasn't that I was chosen, it was just my time to fly. We had a crew ladder, and if I flew this time, then Jerry would fly next, and another guy would fly. We always, because we were very jealous, is that a good word, of our flying time. We would be very upset if somebody got in front of us. So it was my time to fly, and I got to fly that mission with Jay Reed. We had a backup for that. We took off early, just to make sure we could get our timing right. Jay Reed had built in some timing triangles, very good RSO. And so, make a long story short, we flew over the site within 10 seconds of the proper time. The reason we wanted that they wanted us to be over there at a particular time, so they had 2 flights, I think it was F-15s with air-to-ground missiles. And if they had fired at us, because we were trolling to see if they would fire for us, at us, and if they fired at us, they were going to blast that missile site immediately. So the idea would be missile raise, missiles come in. And so we knew that was going to happen. Of course, it was a very classified mission, but I'm not a warmonger, but I kind of hope they do that. Why? Because I don't like communists, I don't like North Korea. And I think we're going to teach them a lesson, those doggone guys. So that was my most memorable thing. Second, I think, would be flying through the Northern Lights at night. I was flying from California to England, Mach 3, just off the coast of Iceland, and suddenly the Northern Lights appeared. And for about a minute and a half or so, I was flying through these shimmering lights that were taking on all sorts of directions. And it was just fantastic. I wish I had a camera. My poor RSO couldn't see all of this, you know. And Jay Reed, I said, look out the window, Jay. Oh gosh, what's that? You know, thought we were under attack or something. No, that's the Northern Lights. This is great. Because I could see them all, you know. Next.
Did you hear that? Is that good? Okay. Probably the one that sticks most for me, I think these guys will heard it, what I call the quotation marks to fire. My partner mentioned Bill Burleson. I got to preface this by saying we got along really great, as you'd expect the guys in the program would. But Bill, he was a straight talking, no smoking, no drinking, no cursing, straight out of Mormon. But he had a great sense of humor. I loved it for a sense of humor, but I'll come back to why that's relevant. Bill and I took off from Okinawa on March 2nd, I think it was 1982. Everything was going normal on our climb out to 24,000 feet or so to meet the tanker. And as Gil pulled the power back to level off, he told me that he had a fire warning light on the left engine. Well, that's not something you want to hear, obviously, but we got through quite a similar training from the senior guys that we thought would be able to handle us just like the simulator. And so we did just that. We started following the procedures that we're supposed to do. I wrote the checklist steps, challenge and response. And it's required that when you're doing the checklist between 2 guys, that one guy calls out the action, the other guy confirms that it's done. So this has been going like clockwork as we're progressing. We've dumped a bunch of gas to get down to landing weight. Went through the single, I forgot to tell you, we got to a point where the fire light wouldn't go out, so Gil had to shut down the left engine. So now we're in single engine configuration, and we're heading back to the base. Everything still looks fine. There's a lot of intermediate steps to go through on a single engine approaching landing, so we went through those. And then I got to the last step in the checklist for Gil, and I said, okay, Gil, emergency landing gear handle pull. Emergency landing gear handle was a little T-handle attached to a 6 or 9 inch cable that wound up into the instrument panel. So I said, emergency landing gear handle pull, and I didn't hear anything. And that didn't make sense. I figured that he was busy or just didn't hear me. I was just about to repeat it when I hear from Gil, remember straight out, no cuss words, no nothing. I hear, well, fart, Frank. It pulled off my hand. What do I do with it now? What had happened is when he pulled the landing gear handle, it snapped. It went back into the instrument panel. The cable went back into the instrument panel, And he was left with the stick in one hand and the handle in the other, and both of us had no landing gear, which was not good. You want the rest of the story? I thought my time was over. Okay, gee, you're spoiling that.
You're allowed to do it.
Okay, well, anyway, that did happen. On extended final and then headed toward the runway when the handle broke off in his hands and that was not a good thing. That's the checklist. We went through the checklist for emergency gear lowering as well, which I'm sorry. When we were going through that checklist is when the handle broke off in his hand. So not too long after that happened, you'll notice that we had some wind blowing RPM as the engine blades, compressor blades were spinning just from the air going through the inlet, inlets of the engine. So Gil decided to reverse all the steps and go back. We had a little bit of wind blowing RPM, and he reversed the steps and he put the handle down, and then the left gear came down. That was good, but not great. A little while later, the right gear came down, which is better, but still not great. The checklist said that landing with no nose gear is a jack situation, so that wasn't good. But we were getting closer and closer to the runway when all of a sudden, landing nose gear came down. We figured it would be a good idea to just put the thing on the runway and try to get it confirmed, get in confirmation from the ground. And it worked pretty well. Gil did a great job. I had my eyes closed the whole time. And thank you, Gil.
Two quickies. One, I think everything went wrong in an FCF. The bird had to go to England, had an engine change, and everything went wrong for the right reasons. We were suited up, unsuited, but suited up. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning, took off, and it was in January. And the bird had to fly, and the result of these catastrophic little, not mistakes, but we couldn't run the engines up, the fuel was dumping. It was like, this was the third time we put our suits on, and I saw 4 sunsets and 3 sunrises in the west on one flight, and I didn't really realize I was so busy, and we took off. It was just sunset at Beale, and as I climbed up, the sun rose above the buttes. We went out to the tanker, and the sun was starting to set, and I was busy, and the tanker had some issues, so they wanted to get gas right away, so we just had some engine issues, so we just picked up some gas quickly, made a turn to the west, and we're accelerating, and all of a sudden, here we go, the sun's doing about 700, we're doing upwards 1700, so I'm climbing, and all of a sudden, boop, the sun pops up in the west. We make a turn north, once again, so to make a long story short, we're coming, and I was so busy, I was flying with, who was with, he was from the Bronx, Joe McHugh, he's passed, but it was the only flight we had, and finally I'm so busy, I said, Jerry, do you know what just happened? He said, we just saw another sunset. And so we turned west again, and all of a sudden, then we started to say, let's do one more. So here we go, we're climbing, and all of a sudden, just about a minute before descent, we got about 250 miles to descent, and you have to make the descent profile. Boom, the sun pops up, and the colors, the indigos and the blues, and it was just like, you're overwhelmed. And then as we descended, the sun set again, and I went, I said, even the shuttle doesn't see sunrises in the west because it's positive. So 4 sunsets and 3 sunrises on one flight, all because maintenance helped us out, and we took off like 8 hours late. The second quickie, 82 Nicaragua, we thought the Cubans were moving airplanes, MiG-21s into Nicaragua, and the boats were, and so Easter Sunday of 1982, we're just home. It's not our flight. As BC said, you're tasked for mission. It's your turn. We take off at night tank. we were directed to be over Nicaragua at 8 o'clock in the morning on Easter Sunday morning and boom them twice. Just to piss them off, to know that they were there, that we were there. So we did it, you know, it's a 7,000 or so, and this is Easter Sunday morning. And my back seater says, Jerry, Easter sunrise is coming. Here we are, Easter sunrise. You know, so we make the mission, we land. It was in the morning, and the family we lived in Penn Valley, and the family wanted to go to the church. They had a late service in Grass Valley. You know, I'm sitting there just dragged. I get in the car, family rolls into church, and here's the minister at the door. Come in. He says, "Good morning, Jerry, and how was your Easter Sunday morning?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's about 7,500 miles, you know, and I think I slept through the service, you know." But it was just, I mean, you know, we live in an unreal world, you know, you don't realize that. But here I am, and I saw a sunrise. This is Easter sunrise. We come back in the minister. Jerry, it's nice to see you for service this morning. How did your morning go? You know, and I had to just say, oh, it was spectacular.
Anybody else, please?
I have a question. Time zones are academic. This is for maintenance. What was the selection process like for maintenance workers, or were they just lucky enough to work at Lockheed? And then what were their days like, and when did they get to see their families? Because I have a feeling it's a bit different as well.
Most of the people that came into the program the first few years, I would get notification that so-and-so is going to be assigned, and I would do a background check on them and check their previous records and all that kind of stuff to make sure they weren't, I'll be nice, they weren't deadheads. We wanted people that knew what they were doing, you know, and offered a good job. So I did do background checks on everybody that was assigned to the program, and turned off a lot of them down. They just didn't meet my standards. Even if they were, you know, some people came in from the Flying Tigers, Air Force Thunderbirds, Navy Blue Angels, and those kind of things that come in. And just because they were in that type of program doesn't mean they were good, really good people. And I had a really tough time, you know, going through some of the records with those people. It turned out pretty good. We didn't have very many people at all that were deadheads. It turned out to be a really good program.
I'll add to that. I was a staff sergeant in the Air Force. I've been on F4s for about 7 years. I was at Holloman. I had no use for Holloman. I wanted to get off F4s. I went to personnel, and I was looking for bases in California with no F4s. I saw Beale Air Force Base. It had bombers, tankers, and T-38s. I said, oh, hell, I can work on T-38s. I lucked out, ended up getting on the SR program, and spending the next 25 years working, like I said, between Beale and Palmdale and Kadena and England and NASA, all that time under.
And they're really good men, too.
I was saying, I hope I passed Don's check. Somebody else, please.
Mike, may I just say something about maintenance? I do a lot of EDU educational stuff, but I've got 2 slides, you know, and I think I said, you saw those slides yesterday, is that you forget a lot of stuff, but the 2 slides you remember is that maintenance owned the airplane. And I mean that very sincerely. We pilots just ran the airplane. How many of us have pre-flight on SR-71? Have you ever pre-flight on SR-71?
I did one time.
And then what?
It might have been Chief Campbell who told me that wasn't done.
We have never pre-flight on SR-71. When the 21-year-old crew chief comes in and says, "Sir, the bird's ready," I'm not walking out to see if the start is hooked up or the bolts are hooking up. Guess what? The bird is ready. That's it. It's the Israeli Air Force. Nobody is going to pre-flight anything. The bird's been pre-flighted. The only thing we want to know is two things. When he comes in and says, we say, how are we going to start the airplane? If it's an air start, we moan. If it's the two Buicks, 900 horsepower that blows the tanker down, everybody's jumping for joy. Everybody wants to start the airplane with 900 horsepower engines drunning and trying to start the engines. It's an amazing sound in the cockpit. And the crew chief says, we're going to start the airplane with the we're going to start the airplane with the Buicks. Yes, we're going to start the airplanes with the Buicks.
All you hear is,
Oh, yeah. But you know, seriously, when the 21-year-old crew, he's just worked 14 hours to put the airplane together. When he says it's ready, it's ready. I've never pre-flight an airplane.
Could I add one more thing to that? And that it is true that it was the first time I was mobile. This is after I've checked out everything, and so as mobile, and we do the pre-flight, and no one ever told me not to do a walk around on the airplane. So I was doing a walk around on the airplane, and it might not have been Chief Campbell, but it was a sergeant that had a bunch of stripes, and he came over to me and said, "Sir, you know, it's, no, we don't normally, the crew doesn't normally do a pre-flight." I said, "What? Why?" And he says, "Well, because we do our job, and we're very proud of that." And I said, "Really? Gosh, that's nice to know." And that was the last time I pre-flighted an airplane. And he was right.
So yeah, I had a question along the lines with the starting. What were the different ways that you would start the engines with, and what was the chemical used to start the engine?
The fuel didn't have a very high flash point. It was hard to light, so we had to have a chemical ignition system called triethyl borane that had a 600 cc tank on the engine. And every time you advance the throttle to the start position, you get 50 cc shot of this chemical in the combustion chamber. It burnt at a very high temperature immediately upon contact with oxygen, and you couldn't put it out. It was really nasty stuff. It was good for 16 applications. You could light the afterburner or start the engine 16 times. After that, you're out of luck. They could start the engines though by upgrading the EGT and doing a trim start. It would work. But the triethyl borane, as they called it, was we had the servicing cart had a scrubber tank in it, and every time you serviced the system, the overflow from the lines, when it automatically drained the lines that were hooked up to the airplane, and it would drain the remainder of the triethyl borane into a scrubber tank, and you had to empty it about every 10 times. And if you forgot to do it, that scrubber tank became very hot, and it would ignite immediately upon contact with oxygen. And I had a fire department one time at one that said, "No problem, we'll put it out." And I just laughed at them, you know, because they went over and put a fire hose in it, put it down there. They were going to walk away. About 20 seconds later, it started on fire again, big old ball flash and stuff. What was really crazy about it is I put the fire out in that bucket by pouring fuel on it, because it was a chemical composition diluted the fluid and caused it to not burn anymore, and hard stuff to get used to.
On some of those really long flights, what was the least number of TEV shots left when the bird got back? Did we get close to 60?
Real quick, like the chief said, 600 cc's, we would set the tip counters for 16 shots. Every time he started the engine or went in the burner, it clicked off backwards.
Right.
The airplanes always came back with tip left over.
Right.
We never ran out of tip in flight.
You know how close it is.
You get up to 12, you get up to 12 sometimes. If you have an unstart, sometimes the burner would blow out, you have to do it, but, you know, if you have 5 refuelings, you know, you got 2 shots to start, 5 for the refueling, that's 7, then you have maybe a burner blowout. You can get up to 10 shots or 12 shots, but I've never run out of 10. Have you ever run out of 10, DC?
Yeah, there was a little known fact about the TEB and afterburner is that you could light an afterburner without TEB, but you had to increase the EGT. And it's called the catalytic ignition. And I did do that one time, and I don't remember why. Obviously, the TEB didn't work or it didn't fire. So, it did, the catalytic ignition didn't work.
Somebody else, please?
Back to inlets and stuff for a minute. Was the inlet designed by Lockheed, or was it designed by Pratt & Whitney, or a combination of the two?
Arnie Gunnison is the engine master, and it was a combination. I think, you know, you can't design an engine that manages the air without looking at the inlet, but unfortunately, engines are inlets, engines, and ejectors. The inlet conditions the air properly. The engine is the biggest speed brake. Remember, we're taking Mach 3.2 air. We're slowing it down in the inlet to Mach 0.7. And we're going to blow it out the back end better than Mach 3.2. So it was a combination of both, especially when you're dealing with the temperatures themselves. The engine is the subsonic part of the propulsion system. The inlet and the ejector are the sub and supersonic part of the propulsion system. So it was a combination of both. And Arnie Gunnison is a master of it. You should see how they used a J70, not a J70, a J75 to heat the air up to put into the engine. They used an engine in front of an engine. So they used the exit exhaust from a jet engine to put it as an intake for the.
He was with Pratt & Whitney, or Lockheed?
No, he was with Pratt & Whitney. He's the master, but it was a combination. It was a combination. You should see the thing that they made to put an engine to go to afterburner and then take that air and put it into the other engine. That's what they did. That's the only way they could. That's the only way they could heat it up. And he was part of that design. Yeah.
Somebody else, please.
This should be easy for you guys. What was your favorite feature of your flight suits? Favorite feature of your flight suits? Did it differ among you guys? What was your favorite feature of the flight suits? Or maybe something you hated the most? Did it differ among you?
Frankie's was smaller.
Are you talking about color or what?
You're talking about the color or the use of the flight suit?
Use and features.
I think it was really neat that we had light preservers that would open, that would inflate automatically if you landed in water, because the chances are you might not be conscious if you had to eject in Mach 3. So that's one thing I really like. I don't know what else. The color, I had a blue flight suit, or pressure suit, and I really liked that one.
You're such a great guy. I think you're talking about the pressure suit. I think that's what threw me, because we had green flight suits and orange flight suits, but those are just regular flight suits. The pressure suit, my favorite aspect of it is it kept you comfortable, and it did a really good job of it in a very hostile environment. It kept it very high temperature, manageable, and pressure was good. And our physiological support division took care of the egress staff, pressure suits, and they did a great job. So I'm just glad it worked. That's what made me happy with it.
I think the one thing, as soon as you close your visor, what's the first thing you have to do? Is scratch your nose. You know, it's just like, I closed my eyes and I scratched my nose. I've spent 11 hours in a suit. DC has spent more than 11 hours in a suit. And you, in the training, you become very comfortable because it's very important to fit the helmet. You don't want to have any hot flashes. They can drive you crazy. So they spend a lot of time to really fit you with, not individually, there's different size helmets, different size suits. And you want to be very comfortable in the helmet because what you don't want, well, you don't want to scratch your nose, so that's okay. But you don't want to have a hot flash on your head because it will drive you crazy. And the suit becomes very cumbersome sometimes because some of the circuit breakers and panels on the left and right side, you physically can't get to, so you're physically taking your hand, pulling you can slide the ring around, but you have to turn, so you're really pulling the suit around to see things. But I think I was amazed how comfortable it was, even with the big gloves. It was incredibly, incredibly comfortable. I don't think I was annoyed at all once I get used to wearing it and making sure that there were no hot spots in the helmet.
How often did they have to change an engine or do major repairs on it? In other words, what was the lifespan of a typical engine?
When we first started the program, we only had about 200 hours of flight time on the engine, and we'd have to take it, pull it back into the shop, do a PE on it, check the compressor blades and the stators and everything, make sure no cracks were appearing, because it was an unknown. Nobody had very much experience in flying lengths of time, Mach 3, the heat, and those types of things. So as the learning curve went up, that 200 hours went to 250, then went to 300, then 350. I don't know, what I can remember was 600 hours when I left.
Excuse me. Basically what we, like Don said, we went 2, and we went to 4, and we went to 6. And the 600-hour, Beal could do the 200 and the 400 in the shop. 600 hours that went back to West Palm Beach, Florida.
I was just going to have you comment on the length of time it took from when you arrived to put the suit on, the procedure you went through to get in your suit.
I think the question was from the time we came to the base and went to PSD physiological support, what was the time schedule to do what we're going to do? Why don't you start this? Well, Frankie has some.
I don't remember what the time was. I know it took about 20 minutes or so to put on the suit and have them thoroughly check it. Well, we didn't have to pre-breathe because the reason why the U-2s pre-breathe is because they went directly up to altitude. We would spend a good 45 minutes in the airplane breathing oxygen before we got up to high altitude. So we didn't have to pre-breathe on that. We did our pre-breathing, starting engines from then on.
But what's an interesting data, just quickly, it takes 5,000 pounds of gas, 2.5 tons, from the time we start till the time we get to the end, just to taxi out. Start the engines, taxi out to the end of the runway, do the run-up, get on the runway, we burn 5,000 pounds of gas. Take off, get the 0.9 to 25,000 feet to get to the tanker, that's another 5,000 pounds of gas. We burn 10,000 pounds of gas. Divide that by the 6 to 7, we're burning, takeoff, we're burning 6 gallons per second. Fill your car up in 3 seconds, we've emptied your fuel tank in the car. It's an incredibly inefficient airplane, subsonically, and as PCO, some supersonically, it's a jewel. It's better than a 727. Unfortunately, we'll only carry 2 people, but the engine inlet combination is so efficient at speed. It's not efficient subsonically, but the airplane was never designed to do that. The airplane was designed to go fast, go straight, and do it first right time. But the fuel consumption from start to rolling out at 25,000 feet to the tanker is 10,000 pounds.
A question about the field. Do you think it would have ever been possible to complete any of the missions that you guys flew without your refueling?
Tanker drivers, we love you. We love you. If we're a 1,500 mile radius flagpole, nothing without the tankers. When you roll out behind the tanker, you know you got 70,000 pounds of gas. And BC, have you ever missed an operational air refueling?
No.
Have you ever missed an operational air refueling? We have never missed an operational air refueling. Not because of us, because the guys in the 135 are rolling out in the middle of the night in the worst weather. Air refueling tracks you can't believe. 2.5 miles running footing, this beautiful bird rolls out in front of you, and you look up and you say, "Thank you, Lord, I got another 70,000 pounds." I'm serious, that's true.
But you did ask whether we ever flew a mission unrefueled, and we did out of Okinawa sometimes when we wanted to really sneak up on the North Koreans. We would do an engine, no transmission on the radios, and we'd have the DO usually up in the tower, and we would get light signals from the Kadena Tower to take the runway at a particular time. And of course, they used is all classified, so nobody was around us. And so we would have a 65,000 fuel load, take off, go directly to North Korea, photograph them, and come back. It's a pretty long, a pretty short mission.
We used to call that a rocket ride.
Another thing that was different, it wasn't just any tanker. It had to be a KC-135Q model tanker. They were specially modified. They carried both a JP-7 and a JP-4 for the case they could burn themselves. KC-10s were the same way. They had specially modified KC-10s that had 2 fuel systems in it. And we could use them for refueling when we went somewhere, ground refueling and air refueling. And it was quite a experience to be somewhere and be doing nose to nose with an airplane refueling, and people come up and think you're nuts because regular airplanes just don't do that. But we would put the SR-71 nose in to the tanker and hook a hose up to it, fill it up full of gas. And of course it would leak everywhere. That was okay. We had a lot of fun doing it.
We've got time for a couple more questions.
When the SR was reactivated for NASA, were any of you involved in that, or were you consulted?
Yes.
What kind of stealth attributes does the plane have, and what kind of maintenance did you have to perform in order to keep those stealth attributes operational?
Exterior aircraft, on the sides from the nose of the aircraft all the way back, are chimes, top and bottom. That is a boat terminology. They have chimes on a speedboat that ride in the water. And the SR-71 is the same way. They're usually the aerodynamic device to fly in the air. And they're plastic asbestos laminate to reduce radar imaging. We also have what we call pie panels all around the leading edge of the wings. And pie panels, hard to explain. There were little wedges. They were alternating. We had plastic asbestos laminate, titanium, plastic asbestos laminate, titanium, all the way around the airplane. those were used to break up any radar image as much as they could for stealth technology. I went to James Madison University when I worked on a B2 to discuss stealth. And I was surprised to find out that in that class they were teaching the SR-71 was the first stealth aircraft ever made. And I was surprised that they came to that conclusion, that they even found out about it. So, but it's true. It was pretty stealthy airline.
If you go outside and look at the front wing, you'll see the wedges. That's asbestos graphite. That's the absorbent. So it's very visible. It's very visible. See the wedges.
Thank you very much for your questions. We want to run a quick film here. It's near and dear to our hearts. Excuse me. It's called A Letter to Kelly.
Dear Kelly.
Turn off the lights. Sorry, folks, technical difficulties.
While they're doing this, this is not a movie about data. You're not going to see one piece of data. This is a movie about people. This is a movie about professionalism. How to do things right the first time. You're not going to hear anything about Mach 3 from points out there. And for us, it's very tough to do this.
One pilot for RSO. I wasn't a member of your design team at the Lockheed Skunk Works or on the assembly line that built the Blackbird. Nor was I a member of the Air Force at Beale, Mildenhall, or Kadena, who kept the Blackbirds flying. I'm not even an airplane buff in the classic sense. I'm just a person that had the privilege of being around your SR-71 Blackbird, and it was an experience I will remember intensely for the rest of my life. There's just something about your Blackbird, Kelly, that words don't adequately describe. Anyone who has been near a Blackbird and felt its presence knows what I'm talking about. It's a feeling in your gut, and instantly you want to be part of it. Part of what I call the Blackbird family. Today, Kelly, you are being honored for your design work on the SR-71, and justly so. To me, the SR-71 is not only your greatest aircraft design, it is perhaps the greatest aircraft ever made. I've heard it said that you considered the Blackbird the most fascinating challenge of your career. No wonder. It was a design that was so advanced that everything that touched it had to be new. New manufacturing processes, new tools, new materials, a whole new approach. You built an operational stealth aircraft a decade before most of the world had even heard the term. It was a design so far ahead of its time that it retired before time could catch up with it. In times of crisis, the Blackbird provided 6 presidents with a unique and critical view of the world. The Blackbird served this country for just over a quarter of a century. In that entire time, it stood in a class of one. To me, the Blackbird is much more than a technical marvel. It's an airplane that gets inside you, an aircraft that causes the adrenaline to flow just by looking at it. Kelly, your Blackbird is the stuff dreams are made. It's the model plane sitting in a young child's room, proof that everything is possible, that the sky isn't the limit. And it's the poster hanging on the office wall of a middle-aged engineer, testimony that yes, even in the real world, miracles do occur. The SR-71 embodies all that excites people about aerospace. Its crew seems part pilot, part astronaut. The Blackbird itself appears part airplane, part spacecraft. The typical Blackbird fan is a cross-section of America. It's your grandfather, your niece, your son. It's the wide-eyed young kid that buys an aircraft book at the National Air and Space Museum. It's the family that traveled hundreds of miles to an air show just to see a Blackbird in person. It's the people on the Air Force Base that stopped what they were doing to watch an SR take off. Everyone, every time, no matter how many times they'd seen it before. And it's the pilot who last flew the Blackbird 20 years ago, who has the look in his eye that says, I flew the best aircraft ever made. The look that can barely contain the desire to get in an SR just one more time and light the burners. When Blackbird 972 made its final record-setting flight to Dulles Airport, I watched the television with mixed emotions. This was the Blackbird's final flight. An aircraft that was the very definition of speed and power would fly away. But my sadness was tempered by the knowledge that this plane would now truly belong to the nation, coming to rest in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. Now millions will be able to do what I have done. Be near a Blackbird, be part of the family. Kelly, in the years to come, whenever I want to experience your airplane's majesty, I will remember the time I spent with your Blackbird, the smell of JP7 fuel, the feel of it on the soles of my shoes, the sound of an air starter lined up, the tap ignited, and I'll put on the film that we shot during those incredible weeks in 1987. I'll watch it, feel it, be part of it again. Because in movies, Kelly, like in our memories, your Blackbird will fly forever. Congratulations, Kelly, and thank you. Devin Bunker, Assistant Cameraman, Blackbird, Duluth.
Thank everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Please continue to support your museum. We hope to see you back in 2 years. If you're all still alive, we're going to be here.